Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Hit like, and if you're new here, new to the channel, I'd recommend hitting that subscribe button right about now. So let's get on with this video. Also, if you're new to this channel, the baby you see on the video before you is little Christopher Gray. He's my own It, Stephen King's It based OC, meaning my own character. I created him. I did the artwork, but not the doll. The doll is the Charlie kit by Joanna Kazmierzak and has been painted and rooted for me by an artist named Camelin Creations over on Etsy. And in this video, we're just going to be changing him into a new outfit. He has been in the outfit he is currently wearing for about 3 or 4 months now. It has been way too long. He's way overdue for a change. So I figured today would be a good day to do that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my recent YouTube name change. So I used to be AI Dream Beats, and now I'm the TheOctoberGladeNursery. And the TheOctoberGladeNursery has been my reborn doll nursery name since the beginning. However, I had originally thought that my YouTube was going to be split more between the dolls and me making AI music. So I decided to name the YouTube channel AI Dream Beats when I started. Unfortunately, I guess at that point I did not have the foresight to see how people would react to that name. I, for one, thought it was a pretty cool name, but there were quite a few people on Facebook and YouTube, mainly YouTube, that would speak to me, and they would treat me as if I was actually an AI because of the name, and I don't know how I didn't see that coming. So I've just kind of gotten a little bit tired of it and decided to switch it to my actual nursery name. And maybe it might not have affected some people, but it did kind of affect me. And I have done my best to ignore the comments that I have gotten. By the way, they're not on any of my videos, they've been on other interactions. Um, I've tried my best to move past it, but unfortunately, it sort of resurrected some years old trauma in my mind that I guess I need to talk about. So, if you didn't know, I am a diagnosed autistic, medically diagnosed. I was diagnosed when it was called Asperger's syndrome when I was around 8 years old in, I think, the year 2000. And in my experience with my particular autism, one of my symptoms has been that my voice when I was a child was very monotone. I didn't really know how to express. I didn't know to go higher or lower. None of that. And another symptom that I had was that I sounded older than I actually was, especially on text. I was very good at spelling and grammar, and I had a very large vocabulary of words that most children my age didn't even know of. I guess you might say I was kind of a precocious child. Um, so, yeah, and those things did not combine very well socially at all. So, you can bet that growing up, I wouldn't say that I was the most bullied child. There were children that were much more bullied than I was, unfortunately, but I was bullied. But the reasons for the bullying were very different in real life versus on the internet, I have to say. In real life, I came to the conclusion that I was bullied because other kids were actively jealous of me, but online, people made fun of me for actually being autistic. And there was this one website that was very popular when I was about 10 to 12 years old. Um, so popular, actually, that it had physical merch being sold in stores. All the kids my age seemed to be on it all the time, every weekend, after school, you name it. And it was where you could pick these little, like, fancy fanciful fantasy creatures, usually fantasy. Some of them were not so fantasy, but others were more so. These different little creatures, and you could kind of raise them like a gigapet, except that they were online, so you could actively share their growth and progress and their pictures with your online friends. And that site was called neopets.com. So this website, Neopets, they had a system where you could invite and keep friends on your friends list, and you could also talk to random strangers, people, make new friends on these forums with threads that people were talking in. I think they may have also had something like guilds, where it's basically you make a group and you invite people to join, and it's like its own little private thing. Anyway, so it was a very social site on top of having the interactivity with the pets. So we all thought it was pretty cool. I know I thought it was pretty cool. I was a big Neopets fan and I was on it often. And you can bet too that I was talking on there. I was making friends and possibly also enemies. I mean, I was 12, and at 12 you tend to fight a lot about a lot more things than you might as an adult. So I made lots of friends and enemies at that age, but there was one particular person that has stuck with me all these years. I have no recollection of what their username was or their avatar, so if you ask me, I genuinely don't know, but I remember their words. I remember this person coming up to me on one of my topics in the forums, and I have no clue what it was I said. I have no idea what the topic was about. I just remember what this person said to me. They came to me and they told me that they thought I was a robot. And at first I thought that maybe they were just a little bit mistaken, and I kind of laughed at it, and I made kind of a more questioning response just to clarify. I was like, "Do you really think I'm a robot?" Like, I was so confused, right? And I logged off and I went about my day, I think. Or maybe I just stayed on the website. I don't remember what I did next. All I know is that I saw a notification at some point pop up and I decided to check. And I was fully expecting this person to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did think you were a robot. My mistake." That's what I expected. But when the page loaded, that is not the response that I saw. And I was, oh, it's hard to put into words. But their response was somewhere along the lines of robot, robot, ha 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 ha, like very mocking, bullying, quite upsetting. Um, and I read that, and child me just broke into pieces. I remember crying, hyperventilating, having an anxiety attack, sort of an existential crisis, thinking that I might be a robot and not even know it. And yes, I know that that's all nonsense, but I was a child at the time, and these are such things as what children come up with most of the time. So I was panicking, I was freaked out. I really didn't want to be a robot because robots were one of the things I was most afraid of in the entire world, and to have somebody tell me that I was one or could be one was deeply unnerving and unsettling. And it probably wasn't handled the best. Look at that onesie, that's so cute with the little elephant on it. Um, my parents probably didn't handle it the best because they were a generation that didn't grow up with the internet, and in their point of view, it was, I don't know, if you play video games, okay, think of all the characters that are in your video games worlds that you can interact with. What are they called? They are called NPCs, which stands for non-player character, right? And so my parents, they were part of a generation that did have video games, but they didn't have the internet. So in their point of view, the internet is like one big, or was like one big video game in which I was the player and everybody else was an NPC and not a human person. So they couldn't understand why I was so upset, hurt, traumatized, crying over what to them was a non human person with pre written dialogue. But I knew that it was an actual other person on the other end that had actually intended to hurt me emotionally, and it had worked. And my parents were sitting there Well, my mom, I have to give my mom much more credit. Mom did sit and hear me out and try to understand, and she hugged me and rocked with me and calmed me down and told me things that made me feel better about myself, but neither of my parents was fully understanding of the fact that this was another person and not a video game character with programmed dialogue that had actually aimed to hurt me and bully me over the internet over being autistic. So it kind of wound up sticking with me that people might view me as something I was absolutely terrified to be. Also, if you're new here, I usually put a plastic bag over my baby dolls' heads when I'm dressing them in something because that's to protect at least the paint on their head and the rooting in their head from wear and tear from being changed. I don't think it protects it completely from the wear and tear, but it does minimize the damage. So, since that point in time, I guess it has always been a bit more triggering than it probably should whenever somebody calls me anything like a robot or an AI. I'm not as afraid of robots and AIs as I used to be. I've actually gotten very used to them now, as I'm sure we all have. Um, Especially in fiction, though. My fears of them began with fiction, and actually kind of ended with fiction. If I can go on a little detour here, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, a movie came out starring Robin Williams called Bicentennial Man, and I both loved that movie and completely feared it. I loved the story and I did love the characters, but I was absolutely scarred by the opening credits. To be shown that these robot creatures were, maybe creatures is a bad word, that robots themselves in general were not made of natural components and weren't a sort of a creature, it freaked me out. I should have known that they weren't a living creature before that point, but I guess that's when it hit home, and I wigged out. I had a panic attack, and I became afraid of robots, even though the movie is very anti fear of robots. And I still grew up loving that movie for other reasons, and I still watched it, but I still had the fear in me after seeing that. I didn't start to lose my fear of robots and AI fictionally until about around the time I was 16 or 17 years old, and I got introduced to the amazing little Japanese hero, Astro Boy. I became absolutely addicted to the series for several years. It is so good. The writing and storytelling are just chef's kiss, and I could go on about it. I could make a whole video talking about how much I love Astro Boy. Um, but anyway, that was what killed my fear of robots fictionally. Now, realistically, I still kind of had a little bit of a niggling fear, but I'm getting used to it. And I actually have gotten to the point where I think some robots are kind of cool, especially audio animatronics. And AI is pretty cool too. I actually play with AI now for fun. But at the time, though, when I was 12, we didn't have any of that, and I was still very much afraid of that kind of thing. And some fears, they may go away for the most part. They may go away probably about 90 to 95%, but some piece of that fear can sometimes stick with you. And so I guess even though I'm no longer afraid of like robots and artificial intelligence on the surface, I still have this fear, I guess, of actually being one or being called one. It's like it's weird because I have no rational reason to still hold on to that, but it's still there and I don't really know why. Um so when somebody calls me an AI or a robot, I don't immediately shut down anymore and I don't cry about it anymore, but it does become one of those things that makes me lie in bed at night staring at the ceiling for a while, you know? Um, or not, I don't know about at night. My sleep schedule is day or night. It's diurnal. It depends. But when I'm sleeping, it can lead to me sort of just like laying there and staring at the ceiling. So I would prefer not to be called AI or a robot, apparently. At least not at this point. Not at this point in time. I guess I'm still not ready for it. And I should, like I said, have seen that coming when I named myself AI Dream Beats. But no, my brain only focused on the fact that that was a good short way to tell people that my beats were made by AI along with myself. Yeah, looking back at that decision, I am really not sure what led me to think that that was going to go fine. So after probably the third or fourth person decided to point and call me an AI and then kind of yell at me over comments and treat me like I wasn't human, I decided I'd had enough. I couldn't deal with the trauma just resurrecting and resurrecting from when I was 12, 11, 12. I don't know exactly the age I was when it happened. It was around there. Um, I just couldn't keep dealing with that, so I was like, you know what? I might as well just change my channel's name to my nursery name. Not to mention the fact that I was also looking at all of my videos that I had done in the last like 4 to 6 months, and it hit me that I really hadn't been posting my music anyway. So yeah, I was noticing much more art doll videos, and I was like, yeah, you know what? It's probably a better idea to rename this channel to my nursery name and just get rid of AI Dream Beats for the most part. Look at little Christopher. He's so cute with his little elephant theme, his little circus clown and elephant theme. That's so sweet. Anyway, as you can see though, since you saw me on screen a little bit in this video, I am not an AI. I am a human being. And I know that, and you know that, and that's really what matters. And this is a little bit random, but I was wondering what you all might think if I did some reading videos with Bongo. Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next week. Bye!